Rachel is a daughter of Jesus, a Christian, strong in faith, a wife, a daughter, a future mother, a friend, a woman who loves to empower other people and especially other women. I think for me, I tried to find happiness everywhere. So if it wasn't with figuring out a job or going to a different school or finding new friends, it was finding a man. And I think I got to a point where I really idolized the idea of relationships, and so it became my main focus. And I was more important about finding the person that I was going to marry than I was about finding me. So I realized that no matter what I tried, I was unhappy. There was nothing that I could do in this world that would make me happy. So I finally got to a point where I realized, what is it about me that couldn't just be okay alone? So I decided to take a journey where I just learned a little bit more about myself and about God, and realized that wholeness really meant being whole with just me and just Him. And it wasn't until I really mastered that and found happiness in my life, in myself, and in my God, that I was able to venture on to actually finding the person that I was meant to marry and being in a healthy relationship. Many experiences with unhealthy ones. And I think a lot of times I would overlook things because for me it was better to have someone than to have no one. So I would deal with cheating, with abuse, with different things because I felt like it was still okay because I wasn't lonely. So dealing with those unhealthy relationships and with a mask really led me to figure out what it is about me that was allowing that, and really led me to want the right relationship and realize my value. It wasn't until I spent time by myself and spent time with God that I was able to realize that I was enough. And in being enough and knowing my worth, I was able to find someone that could appreciate that. Well, there were situations, let's say I've had boyfriends that I knew were cheating, that had other women, and even probably had the evidence to prove it, but I told myself, well, he's still here, or I'm still number one, so as long as I'm not number two, then I'll keep that. Or, he maybe was able to take care of me in financial ways or to support me in that way. So it was like, I'll overlook this because he's giving me that. All I would do was find the positive and try to make the positive outweigh the negative. And so the negative became less important to me, and I would just really try to forget it. I think my lowest point was, it was in between relationships. I had just gotten out of one in which the guy was cheating, and I was partying nonstop every night, all the time. And I got into a really bad accident with one of my best friends at the time because we made the decision to go out and to drive. And we actually hit a brick barricade. And if you could see the car that we actually made it out of in one piece and perfectly fine, you would know that it was a wake-up call for me. I realized that I was just trying to cover up pain and cover up all of my discomfort with other things. So if I could focus on a relationship, if I could focus on clubbing, if I could focus on work, whatever it was that could take away what I was really dealing with, I'd do it. And so that day, when I walked away with really only a scratch, it woke me up because I could have died that day. During that time, it was really non-existent. I'm someone that grew up in the church. I grew up and went to church every Sunday. My parents always had me in choir and usher board and everything else. And I went to a Christian school. So it was definitely a foundation that I grew up with. And so once I went to college, I made the decision just to kind of stray from it. So I always believed, but I never practiced. I always thought that there was a God, but I didn't pray to Him anymore. I didn't read the Bible anymore. I didn't go to church anymore. That was just a conscious decision that I made. And I thought, I'm an adult, I can make these decisions on my own. I did it all those years, so I don't have to do it anymore. So really at that time, my relationship was only the reality of, yeah, he exists. But right now, I don't want to think about that. It wasn't until I realized that everything actually was much better when he was in my life that I actually went back to him. It wasn't easy, I think, because I had always tried to find something to mask the pain and to kind of hide from the real issue. I would, try to go out with friends or try to do other things to kind of take away time with myself. So it was really difficult for me to just be alone. I had always had something to do or someone to do it with. And so I had to really be okay with just being with Rachel. I really transitioned into spending time at home, reading, not even watching the TV, but really making myself develop habits that supported me and not everyone else around me. That transition was hard, but once I started to do it, it became comfortable. It was comfortable for me to be able to actually spend time with myself and to confess the things that had gone on in my life and be honest and open with myself and really forgive myself. I think that was the biggest bridge, was self-forgiveness, because the truth is when you realize everything that you've become and everything that you've done and you actually repent for it and pray to God about it, some of the hardest things to overcome is how you feel about you. It's understanding that, yeah, He forgave me, but do I forgive me? So I think that for me was the hardest part of transition. And so I had to keep praying about that. I prayed all the time for God to allow me to forgive myself so that I could move on and move past it. I met my husband about a year after that. And actually for the first time when we met through a friend, and my friend wanted me to meet him and I didn't want to. And that was very different for me because I was always someone like, oh, there's someone you want me to meet? Oh, there's a guy I can date? I was always so interested in that. And because I finally was at peace and I was okay with being alone, I didn't want somebody to come mess that up. So I was almost not ready to receive the gift because I just wanted to keep what I had. I wanted to keep that happiness. And God really became the most important thing to me. And I needed to be with someone that could understand that they would be second, that He would always be first. So for me, when I met him, it was about a year later, we met, and I came to the table with a list of non-negotiables, which was something new. For me, everything was negotiable. But when I met him, I said, you have to be able to communicate. You have to understand that my faith comes first. You have to have that faith. Like, there were just things that I needed. And so when I met him, he actually met those needs, and that's how we were able to progress and move forward in our relationship. For the most part, he came to me like that. However, there were things, obviously, that we had to learn about each other, and I think that that's normal, but none of them were my non-negotiables. There was no abuse. There was no having to teach him to understand what a faith is or what God is. He felt the same way about his faith as I did. But naturally, two people that are different, of course, you have to learn and grow together. But all of the things that I said were important to me, he got. Well, in that process of a year before I met him that I had taken to myself, I made the decision, because prior to that, abstaining was nothing that I even thought about. I think since I was in high school, I did what I wanted to do, when I wanted to do it, and how. So I made that decision that everyone didn't deserve my body. And I guess in finding my self-worth and finding my faith in my God, I realized really how much power I had and how much I was worth. And so when I met him, I had already made up that decision. So actually one of my non-negotiables was, if you can't deal with the fact that I'm gonna abstain until marriage, you're not the man for me. So I told him, this is what I'm doing, this is the journey I'm on. And it wasn't a decision that he had made for himself at that time, but he saw me. When he met me, he saw me. And so he recognized who I was, what I was worth, and he was okay with it. And he decided to go ahead and do that process with me. So we abstained. We dated and got engaged in 6 months after we met. And we got married in the first year. So we met, got engaged, and got married all in 1 year. And it's amazing, because the truth is, when God is in it, things move quickly. And when you know, you know. And so I had been in so many relationships before for years that were not even as far as we were in a month. We spent genuine time talking and getting to know one another, because there was nothing else to kind of cloud us. We didn't have the physical to worry about. So all we could do was get to know each other. Well, one of my very close friends, I'm a Delta, and one of my pro-fights actually passed away in Brazil, and he knew how much she meant to me. And so I was, at the time, traveling for work all around the country, and I flew home for the services, and I was actually getting ready to speak at the funeral. And that night he came to my house with his family and some of my best friends and proposed the night before her services, because he wanted her to still be a part of our union. So it's always something I'll remember. The fact that he even thought about it was amazing to me. And then we decided to do a destination wedding, because we've been so protective over our relationship. It's ours. And so with destination, you don't have to worry about everybody wanting to come. So we planned this destination wedding. We got married in the Dominican Republic. It was a beautiful ceremony. We still had about 50 people, but if we had it probably back at home, we would have had hundreds. And yeah, it was a great process. What's interesting is that we're from Chicago, and we ended up getting engaged and then moving to Houston a few months after our engagement, before our actual ceremony in the Dominican. So we made the choice to actually get married at a courthouse. We had done things right by our standards and by what we believe God has set for us, so we didn't want to live together and live under the same roof and not be married. So we made the decision to go to the courthouse and get married legally, just the two of us. And then we had the ceremony where we celebrated with our family a few months after that. And the first year there's been a lot of challenges, there's been a lot of ups and downs. We moved to a new city. We had to start all over. New careers, new friends, really not many family members that live here. I think God put us in a position to learn more about each other still. He's really brought us together. Every trial that's come our way, we've had to go through it together. So it's been a great year. People say that the first year is the hardest, and I get it, only because it's two people really coming together and dying to themselves. My husband is a minister. He grew up in the church. His father was a pastor. So I've always had that standard of making sure that I'm involved and sowing into the kingdom and being in a body of believers. So I dedicate a lot of my time at my church to really whatever they need. I have a large role in our women's ministry at our church. I make sure that I, have involvement in our children's ministry at church. And then with us, for His Point Her View, that's a ministry in itself. So we spend time ministering to singles and to couples and to just individuals along their journey of love. Now I believe that it was necessary. And I say that because I'm able to relate to so many women and people. I think that in order for you to be able to talk to someone about experience, you have to go through it. So I could not tell a woman that I understand where she is, or that I know that sometimes it's painful to feel like you're alone, or that I know that it's difficult not to want to be in a relationship or not to feel like there's validation in a man. I get that because I've been there. I know what unhappiness feels like. I know what trying to distract yourself from your truth feels like. So I think that God really took me through that so that I could come out on the other side and say, this is where I was, but this is where I am, and be an inspiration to other people. For me, I'm big on reading and writing. And so I remember when I really started my journey with restarting, my relationship with God and finding that foundation on my own, I was always praying for Him to speak to me. And I used to get really frustrated because I would feel like a voice was supposed to come and I was really supposed to hear Him speak. And I know that for some people they do, but I had to realize that speaking is different for every person. And so for me, I love to write and I love to read, and I would spend a lot of my time, my quiet time, reading, and it would be, faith-based books and then going to the Bible, and I would read multiple books at one time. And so I started to find common threads sometimes. Like I'd read one chapter in one book that would be about a topic and have a verse, and then the next book would say the same. And I started to recognize that He was speaking to me in that way because that's how I would know it. That's really where I would look to. And so then I started to really be awakened to the beauty of how He can speak to people in different ways, and really just paying attention that I was, praying for something that He was already doing. But I was looking so hard for, these voices, or for something to just drop down from the sky and tell me what it was that I needed to hear, that I was overlooking the beautiful ways that I could understand that He was already speaking to me. And so for me, that just felt amazing to know that He cares enough, that He loves me enough to meet me on my level and to really speak to me for me. I think for me, I just really want women to know that they're enough. that it doesn't take someone else to validate you. It doesn't take a man, a parent, a friend, that really you and God are all you truly need, and that really can be the first step to you being propelled into your purpose and into your destiny. Of course, people will be sent to meet you along your journey and along your path to assist you, but you've got to be able to be confident enough in who you are with what God has given you before He can really give you more. I heard about Straight Talk Woman Talk actually from one of my mentors who has been attached to the Wilkins. And she was telling me, you really just need to get on, because I know that women is your passion. You love to hear from women, you love to hear their stories, you love to be able to relate, and you love to be able to pour in. And I think it's always important for you to learn from others, and to not just pour into others, but to allow others to pour into you as well. So she invited me to get on the call, and of course I met you, Miss Lady P, and you invited me to get on the call, and it's just been phenomenal hearing different women and their stories and their survival and their advice. It's been great, and knowing that there are women not just in your city, and not just in your state, but all over the U.S. that deal with similar things, that even deal with different things, and how they've come out on the other side. I think it's amazing, and to have a platform of women that support each other it's phenomenal, because in this day and age, finding women to support each other is difficult. But knowing that you can, come on and you can talk and you can be open and you can be yourself and be accepted for it, I think it's amazing. I am Rachel Burnside. I am a faith fighter. I am a woman empowerment specialist, and I am one of the 333.